Part 1. The Loss of the Diamond. The events told by Gabriel Betteridge, head servant of Lady Julia Verinder. Chapter 1. This morning, May the 21st, 1850, my lady's nephew, Mr. Franklin Blake, said to me, "Betteridge, I've seen Mr. Bruff, our lawyer, and we talked about the loss of the diamond 2 years ago. He thinks a complete record of the facts ought to be put down in writing. And I agree with him. The story should be told, and I believe we've found a way to do it. Everyone will tell their part of the story in turn, beginning at the beginning. I have a letter telling how my uncle got hold of the diamond in India. Next, we must tell how the stone reached my aunt's house in York. 47. My lady invited me to tea. "Gabriel," she said, "it is time to work less. From today, you will give up the outdoor work and simply look after the servants here in the house." I protested, but looking out over the cold grey hills, I knew she was right. Chapter 2. I shall begin with the morning of the 24th of May, 1848. My lady called me into her sitting room. "My nephew, Franklin Blake, has returned from abroad," she said. "He is coming to stay until Rachel's birthday next month. He will arrive tomorrow." I calculated he was 25 years old. I hadn't seen him since he was a boy. The nicest little boy I've ever known. The fun he and Rachel had playing together. He'd gone abroad to schools in Germany, Italy, and France, and had then wandered around Europe, no doubt borrowing everywhere he went. I remembered he still owed me a halfpenny. He spent like water. Probably on those continental women he mentioned to me in a letter once. His yearly allowance of £700 disappeared in an instant. Next morning, my lady and Miss Rachel, expecting Mr. Franklin at dinner time, some kind of harm to Mr. Franklin. She was in the garden when they left. On the road, thinking they were unseen, one of them had poured ink into the boy's hand and made signs over his head. "Can you see the Englishman from abroad?" the Indian asked him. "I see him," said the boy, staring at the ink. "Has he got it with him?" "Mr. Franklin, when he comes," I replied. Chapter 3. I was nearly asleep again when Nancy, the kitchen maid, rushed out, bumping into my chair. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, "but Rosanna's late for dinner again. She fainted again this morning and asked to go out for some air. She'll be at the Shivering Sand, no doubt." I had a kind of pity for Rosanna, so I decided to fetch her myself. 4 months before, in London, my lady had visited a home for women who had just been released from prison. She met Rosanna Spearman, who had been a thief, an extremely plain-looking girl with a deformed shoulder. The director recommended her, saying, "Our house is near the sea, with beautiful walks in all directions. But a quarter of a mile away is an ugly, lonely little bay that has the most horrible quicksands. When the tide turns, something happens down under the surface. The whole face of the quicksand begins to tremble. No boat ever comes into that bay. Even the birds seem to avoid it. Yet it was Rosanna's into the quicksand. 'Look,' she said. The tide was turning. The whole face of the sands was beginning to tremble. 'Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it terrible?' she cried. 'Throw a stone in, sir. Watch the sand suck it down.' I heard a voice shout, 'Betteridge!' Rosanna jumped up and looked towards the woods behind us. I was astonished by the sudden change in her. Her cheeks turned a beautiful red. Her whole being seemed to brighten with a kind of breathless surprise. I looked round and saw a handsome, beautifully dressed young gentleman coming out of the trees. His smile would have made even the quicksand smile. He sat down beside me, put his arm around me, and said, "Dear old Betteridge," and met him in the hall. He was old, wasted, but looked as wild and wicked as ever. "Tell my sister," he said, "that I have come to wish my niece a happy birthday." I went upstairs with the message. Controlling her anger, my lady said coldly, "Tell Colonel Herncastle that Rachel is busy, and that I do not wish to see him." He looked around him suspiciously. "You must understand that the idea of chosen servants of an old Hindu superstition, waiting for years for the opportunity to get back their holy stone, is perfectly normal, in the Oriental way of thinking, that is. Their religion has given them a different idea of patience to ours. The Colonel knew this, and made clever arrangements to hide the stone during his lifetime." He lay down. "I don't want to alarm my aunt unnecessarily," he said, staring up at the sky. "Yet I feel she must be warned. If you were in my place, Betteridge, what would you do?" "Sir," I said, "today is May the 25th. The Colonel's will states that Miss Rachel must be given the diamond on her birthday, June the 21st. Chapter 4. When my lady and Miss Rachel returned in the afternoon, I told them that Mr. Franklin had arrived, but had had to go into Fritzing Hall on business. Shortly afterwards, Penelope told me she thought Rosanna had fallen hopelessly in love with Mr. Franklin. She was behaving strangely. Happy one minute, sad the next, and she kept asking questions about him. She had written his name in her sewing box and taken a lot of trouble with her hair, crying as she looked at her deformed shoulder. The moon was full and the air was still. I could hear the sea rolling in over the shivering sand. Then I heard a sound, much closer, and saw a shadow disappear round the corner of the house. I heard feet running away. But by the time I reached the corner, whoever it was had disappeared. Samuel and I took guns, searched the garden, but found nothing. Returning, Chapter 5. The next day I showed the bottle to Mr. Franklin. They believe the boy can see where eyes cannot see, he said. He smiled. If he can see into the bank, they won't trouble us here any longer. Maybe the boy could see through walls, because they never came near the house again in the week. Chapter 6. June the 21st. Rachel's birthday was cloudy at dawn, but the sky soon cleared. After breakfast, Mr. Franklin and I met to discuss the Moonstone. He was nervous of his moon, a deep yellow that sucked your eyes into it, so you saw nothing else. Curiously enough, as we stood admiring it, Mr. Godfrey, his admiring eyes on Miss Rachel, said, "It's only mineral, my dear, just a piece of very hard stone." Later, my lady told me that she had the blackest suspicions of the Colonel's motives, and had decided to get the Moonstone out of Rachel's possession. I didn't tell her about the Indians. Penelope came in as I was dressing for dinner. "News for you, father," she said. "I saw Miss Rachel and that nasty scheming ladies' charity man go into the rose garden arm in arm, laughing, and come back walking apart with very long faces. He stopped her and said, 'Do you want me to stay?' as if nothing had happened. She turned on him. 'Yes,' she said, 'you've accepted my mother's invitation. Now let's forget what happened, Godfrey, please.' She left him. He stood there saying, 'Annoying, annoying.' Isn't it wonderful? I told you Mr. Franklin's the man." I heard wheels outside. The first guests. I reached the hall just in time to welcome Mr. and Mrs. Ablewhite. Chapter 7. 24 guests sat down to dinner. I will mention only a few. Miss Rachel, the queen of the evening, wore her wonderful birthday present. Cleverly, Mr. Franklin had fixed it to her dress with silver wire. On her left sat Dr. Candy from Fritzing Hall. I became sadly aware that the party lacked life. Nobody had their usual appetite. There were often gaps in the talk, and even old jokers like Dr. Candy had nothing funny to say. Normally brilliant conversationalists seemed almost dull. Mr. Godfrey, for instance. He spent the whole meal in serious discussion with Miss Clack, a distant cousin of Miss Rachel's. She was one of his ladies' charity friends, a most religiously minded woman. However, I noticed she had a rather low-cut dress and a fondness for champagne. Not even Mr. Franklin was able to brighten up the evening. On the contrary, having annoyed our local priest with his ideas on marriage, he made Dr. Candy angry with his views on medicine. The argument ended on the subject of his sleepless nights. Dr. Candy told him that his nerves were out of order, and their chief, his dark skin now slightly grey, turned to us and said, "There will be no magic tonight." Everyone except Mr. Murthwaite, Mr. Franklin, and myself went inside. I led the Indians to the gates, and they left. When I returned, Mr. Murthwaite and Mr. Franklin were talking. "Gabriel," said Mr. Franklin, "Mr. Murthwaite suspects that they are priests." Chapter 8. When my lady had said good night to Mr. Franklin and Mr. Godfrey, she looked hard at her brother's gift, shining on her daughter's dress. "Rachel," she asked, "where will you put your diamond tonight?" Rachel thought. "In my Indian cabinet, of course. The one with all the drawers." Her mother frowned. "My dear, it has no lock on it." "Father, the diamond's gone!" she screamed, and dragged me upstairs. Miss Rachel was standing as white as a sheet beside her Indian cabinet, one of its drawers open, empty. "I saw Miss Rachel put the diamond in there last night," Penelope cried. "Is this true, miss?" I asked. With a look that was completely unlike her, with a voice that didn't seem to be her, if it's not already too late. Seeing my lady's and Mr. Godfrey's surprise, he added, "All I can say now is they certainly have the diamond. I'll ride to Fritzing Hall immediately." I hurried out after him and asked how the Indians could have got into the house. "One may have got in while the guests were leaving," he shouted, riding off. But how did the thief escape? I inspected the house. Hopeless. "Why? Have the Indians escaped, sir?" I asked. "Those Indians have been imprisoned unfairly," he replied. "Police inquiries proved that they returned to Fritzing Hall and stayed in their hotel all night. Nevertheless, in case of any further discoveries, they're being kept in prison for a week." But if they were innocent, I asked myself, who had taken the Moonstone? Ruth. "Are you accusing me?" my daughter replied fiercely. After I had smoothed things over, she told him how she had seen Miss Rachel put the diamond in the drawer before going to bed. Next morning at 8 o'clock, when she brought Miss Rachel her breakfast, she had found the drawer open, empty. Seagrave knocked on Miss Rachel's bedroom door. "Go away! I have nothing to say to anyone," she shouted from inside. Seeing his anger and surprise, I told him Miss Rachel was ill, and asked him to wait and see her later. "Seagrave is a fool," Mr. Franklin whispered downstairs, before going out onto the terrace with Mr. Godfrey. Miss Rachel came downstairs as pale as death, ignoring the superintendent, who tried to speak to her. She went out onto the terrace, straight to Mr. Franklin, ignoring Mr. Godfrey, who stepped back and left them alone. I watched Miss Rachel's words bring a look of complete astonishment to Mr. Franklin's face. Seeing my lady join them on the terrace, Miss Rachel said some quick last words to her cousin and rushed inside. Mr. Godfrey joined my lady and Mr. Franklin, and they walked off, Mr. Franklin explaining something. Inside, Miss Rachel brushed past Seagrave on her way upstairs. Chapter 9. Two pieces of news came on Friday morning. First, the baker had met Rosanna walking towards Fritzing Hall on Thursday afternoon. Second, Dr. Candy, as though speaking to a child. Seagrave and Cuff spoke in private in my office. Afterwards, the superintendent seemed excited, and the sergeant was yawning. "The sergeant wishes to see Miss Verinder's sitting room," Seagrave announced authoritatively. I took them upstairs. Softly, Cuff examined the cabinet and the entire room. Only the door seemed to awaken his curiosity. She went and shut herself up in her room again. Hearing her burst out crying inside, Cuff said, "Miss Verinder is extremely upset about the loss of her diamond." A faint smile appeared on his lips. Naturally, it's an extremely valuable jewel. His face hardened. "Now, we must discover when the paint was last seen without that smear. Who saw it last on Wednesday night?" "Possibly Mr. Beckham." She saw them finish the last part, and had seen it as late as midnight without a smear. She had been careful not to touch it. He examined her dress. There was no trace of paint. He then asked me whether a dog might have entered the room. I said this was impossible. He studied the smear closely and was satisfied it had been made by clothing between midnight and 3 o'clock on Thursday morning. "Yes, Superintendent," he said. "Please feel free to return to Fritzing Hall. But leave one of your men here, will you? In case I need him. Good morning." He went to the window and stood there, whistling "The Last Rose of Summer." Seagrave, deeply offended, marched noisily out. Nodding thoughtfully, his eyes on Miss Rachel's bedroom door, Cuff asked to speak to my lady. Leaving the room, I heard Mr. Franklin say to him, "Can you guess yet who has stolen the diamond?" "Nobody has stolen the diamond," Cuff replied. Chapter 10. "Must I see him?" my lady said. "I don't know why, but I have a feeling that horrible little man is bringing trouble and misery into this house. But if I must see him, I must. Stay with me while we talk, will you, Gabriel?" Mr. Franklin returned to Mr. Godfrey, who was soon to be leaving. I took Cuff to my lady's room. "I hope," she added, getting up to go and ask Miss Rachel for the keys to her wardrobe. The sergeant bowed. "I have said, your ladyship, that I don't suspect anyone of stealing. At least, not at the moment." Cuff whistled the last rose of summer until Samuel came in with a note. Miss Rachel flatly refused to let her wardrobe be searched. "Ah," said the sergeant, as though somehow expecting this. "It's all wardrobes or none. A pity." His sad eyes fell on me. "You don't seem too disappointed," I said. "Mr. Betteridge," he replied, "let's go and have a look at those roses, shall we?" Chapter 11. "Walls have ears," said Cuff, examining a rose. "In my business we prefer the open air. Like this beauty." He sighed. "I've decided to search the servants' thoughts and actions instead of their wardrobes. But before I do, can I ask you whether any of them have acted strangely since the loss of the diamond?" Rosanna immediately came to mind, but before I could answer, ugly women have a bad time in this world. He looked me very hard in the face, then took my hand and shook it. "Mr. Betteridge," he said, "I like you." Back in my office, he asked me to call the servants one by one. The cook was the first, then my lady's maid, then Penelope. Rosanna was next. She stayed longer than any of them, and came out. Of course, they had told Cuff all this. Later, out in the afternoon, I met Mr. Franklin on the bushy path. When he had returned, My lady had told him about Miss Rachel's refusal of the search. I told him everything else that had happened. Rosanna Spearman went to Fritzing Hall secretly, he said. She burnt her paint-stained dress. She must have stolen the diamond. I must tell my aunt immediately. Not just yet, please, sir, said Cuff's sad voice behind us. We turned to him. Why not just yet? Said Mr. Franklin, annoyed. Because, sir, if you tell her ladyship, she will tell Miss Verinder. Mr. Franklin walked up to the sergeant and stared threateningly down at him. Are you forbidding me? He inquired. I'm saying, sir, that if you tell Lady Verinder or anyone else before I give you permission, I will abandon the case. Realizing he had no choice, Mr. Franklin turned away angrily and left us. Mr. Betteridge, Cuff said, please leave the detective work to me, will you? He took my arm. What do you want of me now? I said. Information, as usual, he replied, with a weak smile. He pointed towards the shivering sand. Show me the beach. As we approached the bay in the grey of evening, Cuff said, I understand your charitable feelings for that poor girl, but she's not in the slightest danger of getting into trouble. Not if I can prove she was simply concerned with the disappearance of the diamond. I have evidence as plain as the nose on your face that she's simply an instrument in the hands of another person. The sand may tell us what she's been doing. I felt suddenly uneasy. I could hear Rosanna telling me that the quicksand seemed to be pulling her to it against her will. The light was rapidly fading, and, as there often is when the tide is about to turn, an awful, breathless calm hung over the bay. Cold fear ran up my spine as we saw the mirror-like surface of the sand begin to tremble. She was obviously trying to hide where her walk ended, to hide whatever she had under her coat. Perhaps, if we go to the cottage, we may find out what it was. We reached the fishing village before dark. The cottage belonged to a family called Yolland. The daughter, Lucy, who had a deformed foot, had made friends with Rosanna. Mrs. Yolland invited us in. 2 chains. Softly, Cuff began whistling The Last Rose of Summer. Chapter 12.
Yes,
said Cuff, as we left the village in the dark.
she joined the chains to the case and sunk it in the water, or in the quicksand, fixing it to the rocks. All very clear, but the mystery is, what is in the case? Not the diamond, obviously.
Not the diamond, I thought. The stained dress, then. He stopped and turned to me in the shadows.
Does anything that is thrown into that quicksand ever come out again?
Never, I answered.
The question is why?
Cuff continued.
Why not just tie the dress around a heavy stone and throw it into the quicksand? But is it a dress? Could it be a nightgown, for example? I must go to Fritzing Hall tomorrow and find out what she bought.
When we got back, the servants were at supper. Rosanna had returned an hour before, had gone upstairs to take off her coat, and was now sitting quietly with them. I followed Cuff round to the back of the house. He looked up at Miss Rachel's bedroom window, watching lights passing to and fro.
I bet you £1, Mr. Betteridge,
he said,
that an hour ago Miss Verinder decided to leave the house.
Samuel met us inside. Her ladyship is waiting to see you and Sergeant Cuff, he said.
Leaving a little? I have to go to Fritzing Hall tomorrow morning, and won't be back until 2 p.m. I would like to say a few words to her, unexpectedly, before she goes.
Unwillingly, my lady accepted. She told me to tell the carriage not to come until 2.
And please don't mention me as the cause for putting off her departure, Cuff added.
My lady was about to say something, but stopped herself. She waved her hand for us to leave her.
She almost told us,
Cuff said, once we were outside.
And the mystery that puzzles you would have been at an end tonight.
Curse you, I cried. There's something you've known all this time. Tell me the truth, Sergeant. What do you suspect?
I don't suspect. I know,
he said calmly. Are you trying to tell me she stole her own diamond? I said.
She has had it all the time, calculating that we will suspect Rosanna.
He almost smiled.
We'll let the matter rest tonight, I think. I'm hungry. Would you like to have supper with me?
I said I'd lost my appetite, left him with the gardener, and went out for some air. Dark clouds were gathering in the distance. The wind was rising. Bad weather was on the way. Samuel brought me a note from...
I want to be in the way.
Chapter 13. Next morning, Cuff didn't leave for Fritzing Hall straight away, as expected. I met Mr. Franklin on his favourite walk down the bushy path. The sergeant joined us. "What do you want?" Mr. Franklin said to him sharply.
"I want to remind you, sir,"
Cuff replied,
"that I am an officer of the law, and it is your duty to give me any special information which you possess."
"I have no special information."
"And have nothing to say?" "Not even about Rosanna Spearman?"
said Cuff.
"Hasn't she spoken to you, or tried to speak to you?"
As Cuff said this, Rosanna appeared nearby. Penelope was with her, obviously trying to make her go back inside. Seeing Mr. Franklin, Rosanna stopped. Cuff, pretending not to notice them, said loudly,
"You needn't be afraid of harming the girl, sir."
"I take no interest in Rosanna." "Please talk to Rosanna, Father," she said. "I'm so worried about her. Mr. Franklin has hurt her cruelly without intending it. I asked her why she was in the garden. She wanted to speak to him," she replied. "I tried to stop her. I told her she was stupid to expect him to take any interest in her. She frightened me, Father. She turned to stone when he said those words. Since then she's gone around in a kind of dream." We found her sweeping a corridor. There was a strange dullness in her eyes. "Cheer up, Rosanna," I said. "If you've got something on your mind, you can tell me. I'm your friend." She went on sweeping, more like a machine than a living person.
"Yes,"
she said.
"I will tell. But Mr. Franklin, not you. But I shan't trouble him today."
"You can tell me, if it will relieve your mind," said Penelope.
"No," she said to herself. "I know a better way of relieving my mind."
We left her as we had found her, like a woman in a dream. She should see a doctor, I thought, then remembered that Dr. Candy was extremely ill. Mr. Franklin turned to me. "Please, Betteridge, get me to the station," he said, and went inside.
"It's time to sort this business out,"
said Cuff.
"Where's Rosanna Spearman?"
We asked servants. She hadn't been seen for an hour.
"Your dear Rosanna won't slip through my fingers that easily," he said. "She and Miss Rachel will meet at Fritzing Hall. She's either gone there,"
I asked, when we were alone again.
"The hiding place is in that letter,"
Cuff replied.
"I shall pay Mrs. Yolland another visit on Monday."
Chapter 14. Duffy, the gardener's boy, had seen Rosanna half an hour before, running towards the sea.
"Come with me, Duffy,"
said Cuff.
"and you, Mr. Betteridge, stay here till I come back."
They hurried off towards the shivering sand. But not long afterwards, Duffy came running back. I had to send one of Rosanna's shoes quickly. Chapter 15. Mr. Franklin had made up his mind to leave. "Wait a day or two longer, sir, and give Miss Rachel another chance," I said. He handed me my lady's letter. "Franklin, I am forced to believe now that the Moonstone's mysterious disappearance is no mystery to Rachel. I have tried everything, but something forbids her from breaking her silence. She is in a pitiful state of nervous excitement. I shall take her to London for a change of air and some medical advice. Please come and see us there, will you? But not straight away. It is impossible to reason with her at the moment, and for the moment you two are better apart. Give her time." "The Moonstone has given Colonel Herncastle his revenge," said Mr. Franklin, "but in a way he never dreamt of." We said good-bye, and sad and weary I went inside. He was right. The diamond had brought us nothing but unhappiness. The next day, Sunday, Samuel brought a message. My lady and Miss Rachel were leaving directly from Fritzinghall for London that day. Penelope was to accompany them, but I was to remain in the country. I had said good-bye to Penelope at the gates. Mr. Godfrey had visited, and was most politely received. Saturday's post brought an envelope from Cuff, containing an article from a London newspaper, a report from the law courts. Mr. Septimus Luca, a dealer in Oriental jewellery, complained to the court that he had been annoyed by 3 poor Indians. Again and again they had tried to enter his house for someone else to take up. Part 2. The Discovery of the Truth. 1848 to 1849. First narrative by Miss Clack, niece of the late Sir John Verinder. Chapter 1. My dear parents, both now in heaven, taught me to fold my clothes carefully, to always say my prayers before going to bed, and to keep a diary. The last of these excellent habits will, I hope, enable me to be useful to a wealthy relation. Recently, Mr. Franklin Blake. I sent her upstairs to say that I didn't want to disturb them, but as I was passing, I wondered whether I could be of any use to them. When the Betteridge girl came downstairs, I decided to have a Christian word with her about the unnecessary amount of ribbons on her cap. She opened the front door before telling me, with a minimum of politeness, that I was invited to lunch tomorrow. I left. That evening we had a meeting of the Young Mothers' Small Clothes. Mr. Ablewhite, after cashing a cheque at a bank in Lombard Street, passed Mr. Luker, a perfect stranger, who happened to be leaving the bank at the same time. The stranger insisted on Mr. Godfrey leaving first, and the two men went their separate ways. Mr. Godfrey went back to his house in Lambeth, where a poorly dressed young boy was waiting for him. The boy handed him a letter, saying he had been asked to deliver it by an old lady, visited various parts of London on business. Returning home, he found a letter waiting for him. A customer from Manchester, a collector of Oriental antiques, announced that he was on a short visit to London and desired to see Mr. Luker urgently about an important sale. He drove immediately to an address in Tottenham Court Road, where exactly the same thing happened to him, with one slight difference. Mr. Luker's gold watch, his wallet, nothing was missing, except one thing: a receipt for an extremely valuable object which he had put in the bank. The receipt was useless to anyone else, since it clearly stated that only Mr. Luker himself could remove the object from the bank. Mr. Luker hurried to the bank. Nobody had been there with the receipt. He went to the police, who told him about Mr. Godfrey's child of such fine parents. After lunch she got up in her shamefully colourful dress and said, "I'll go and read now, Mamma, but tell me if Godfrey calls. I can't wait to hear all about his adventure in Northumberland Street." She gave me a careless look. "Goodbye, Clack," she said, and left in a cloud of perfume. I refused to let her make me angry. I did what any good Christian would do. I simply decided to practice it. "Dear Aunt," I said, "she's obviously keeping a sinful secret from you and everybody. Something in these recent events threatens her with discovery." There was a knock on the door. Miss Cap Ribbons entered and announced a visitor, Mr. Godfrey Ablewhite. Chapter 2. A model of manners, Mr. Godfrey walked in shortly after the announcement of his name. We both asked him whether he felt himself again after his terrible adventure. "My dear aunt, my dear Miss Clack," he exclaimed, "what have I done to deserve all this sympathy? I would have preferred to have kept the whole thing to myself." I was overcome by the heavenly gentleness of his smile, by the richness of his deep voice. "And how is dear Rachel?" he inquired. "And you, Miss Clack, I really do hope to be able to be at the young mother's small clothes meeting next week." I was about to reply when we were disturbed by Rachel. "I am charmed to see you, Godfrey," she said. "I wish you had brought Mr. Luca with you. Never mind. Tell me the whole story immediately." I was sad to see him take her hand. "Dearest Rachel," he said, "the newspapers have told it better than I can." "Rachel, darling," I remarked, "true greatness and courage are always modest." "Godfrey," she said, not taking any notice of me, uttering this terrible insult, his noble eyes filled with tears. He put out his hand to take hers. She jumped to her feet with a scream. "Don't touch me!" she cried. She looked at her mother. "This is all my fault. I sacrificed myself. I had a right to do that, but not to keep a secret that ruins an innocent man for life." "You exaggerate," Mr. Godfrey said. "My reputation can't be ruined by rumors like that." "You're a better man than I believed. I'll try and repair the wrong I've done you." She gave him her hand, and he actually kissed it. "I will come, dearest," he said, "as long as you never mention this hateful subject again." I was deeply shocked by our Christian hero's behaviour. A thunderous knock at the door startled us all. Rachel got up. "They've come to take me to the flower show," she said, teary-eyed. She kissed her mother. "Mamma, before I go, this hasn't caused you too much anxiety, has it?" "No, no, my dear. Go with your friends now and enjoy yourself." She left the room. My heart bled for the poor, misguided girl. Mr. Godfrey gave us one of his beautiful smiles, held out a hand to his aunt, a hand to me. I closed my eyes, put his hand, in a moment of self-forgetfulness, to my lips. I had just time to hurry home, get the books, and return for the signing of the will. When I returned, the doctor was with Aunt Verinder. I joined Mr. Bruff in the library. He was surprised to see me. We had met on similar occasions more than once. "Have you come to stay here?" he said, eyeing my large bag full of books. "My aunt has asked me to witness her will," I said. "I see," he said. "Very well. After all, you've no financial interest in it. So tell me, Miss Clack, what's the latest news from the world of ladies' charity? How is your friend Godfrey Ablewhite? I've been hearing some salty stories about him." Understanding his meaning perfectly, I replied, "I won't argue with a clever lawyer, Mr. Bruff. I will simply say that in the eyes of a famous London police officer, there is not the slightest shadow of suspicion on anyone except Miss Verinder." "Do you mean," he replied, "that Godfrey was here 2 hours ago? Rachel declared that he was innocent." I went on to describe the whole scene, everything that was said. "You would have made a good lawyer, Miss Clack," he said, when I had finished. He began walking thoughtfully up and down. The new light I had thrown on the subject had obviously disturbed him. "What a case," I heard him say to himself. "A complete mystery." "Excuse me," I said, "but may I remind you to steal the jewel? The human heart is unsearchable," I said gently. "No, no, Miss Clack," he said. "Miss Rachel's innocence is without doubt. So is Mr. Ablewhite's. So is Mr. Franklin's. All we know is that the Moonstone came to London, and that Mr. Luca or his banker has it at the moment.
It puzzles you, me, everybody. A servant came in to say Aunt Verinder was ready to receive us. Chapter 3. My aunt's will was as short as her husband's. Her daughter would inherit everything. A handsome young servant, Samuel, was second witness. The signing took less than 2 minutes. Afterwards, Mr. Bruff looked at me, hoping perhaps that I might leave him alone with my aunt. He might as well have expected the Rock of Gibraltar to move. He said something under his breath and left. My aunt lay down on the sofa. "I haven't forgotten you, dear," she said. "You're not mentioned in the will, but I intend to give you something to remember me by." Here was a golden opportunity. I took a book out of my bag, The Snake at Home by Miss Bellows. This fine Christian work shows how evil lies in wait for us in the most innocent actions of our daily lives. "Read this book," I said, "and you will have given me all I could ever want." My poor aunt glanced at the book and handed it back to me, looking more confused than ever. "I'm afraid, Drusilla," she said, "that the doctor has advised me to read only amusing books." "Aunt," I said patiently, "let me leave it here." She gave me an exhausted look, so I thought it might be wise to leave. Said she had had a bad night and was resting on the sofa. I said I would wait in the library. I thought that Rachel and her pleasure-loving friends, Mr. Godfrey included, alas, were all at the concert. So having placed books here and there, I decided to go upstairs and put some in the living room. As I entered, I heard a knock on the door downstairs, then heard Samuel say, "Upstairs, if you please, sir." I heard footsteps. Not wanting to be discovered upstairs on my own, I hurried into a small area on one side of the living room and pulled the curtain. The man entered the living room and began walking up and down, talking to himself. "Do it today. You must do it today," he kept saying. It was Godfrey Ablewhite. Chapter 4. I was about to rush out and beg him in the name of the ladies' committees to explain himself, when I heard Rachel say, "Why didn't you go into the library?" He laughed softly. "Because I was told Miss Clack is in there." She laughed. "Clack? In the library?" she replied. "You're right, Godfrey, we're much better here. Bring that chair nearer to me." Carefully, I moved the curtain so I could see. "Well?" she went on. What did you say to them? Just what you said to say, dear. They were sad not to see you at the concert. He brought his chair even closer and took her hand. Can words describe how saddened I was by this sight? Have you forgotten, Godfrey? She said. We agreed to be cousins, and nothing more. My heart breaks that agreement, Rachel, every time I see you. Then don't see me. No. Am I mad, Rachel, to dream that one day your heart may soften to me? He put his handkerchief to his eyes. Even she seemed to be moved. Are you really sure, Godfrey, that you are that fond of me? You're my only interest in life. Would you believe that now my charitable duties seem like a nuisance to me? When I see a lady's committed now, I wish I was at the other end of the earth. You have made your confession, she said. Now I think the best thing you can do is leave. I'm not good enough for you, Godfrey. I hate myself, don't you understand? She burst into tears. And I don't want your pity. Now go away, will you? He did something completely unexpected. He knelt at her feet and put both arms round her. Noble person, he said. She was so surprised or fascinated, I don't know which, that she made absolutely no effort to put his arms back where they should have been. Yes, he repeated, you're such a noble person. Please, let me be the one to take care of your poor me to make things even worse. One question, Rachel. Do you have anything against me? I always liked you. I respect and admire you. How many wives can say that, Rachel? How many respect and admire their husbands? Marry me, dearest. I value your respect and admiration more than the love of any other woman. Slow down, Godfrey. You're putting something into my head which I never even thought of before. I won't get up. Remembrance. Remarkable change in the poor child, that I felt that I might at last be able to help her towards the only true happiness, the love of God. And the stay in Brighton would be a chance to begin the good work. She suggested that I should go to Brighton first, to prepare the house. I accepted. By Saturday afternoon I had found suitable servants, and all was ready. The joy of being able to convert her to the Christian faith filled my mind with a heavenly peace. Having placed a few carefully chosen
Second narrative by Matthew Bruff, lawyer. Chapter 1. I can throw some light on certain points which have remained in the dark. My narrative begins shortly after Lady Verander's death, when I heard of Miss Verander's proposed marriage. I was terribly disappointed when I heard that she was to marry a man I had always believed to be a smooth-tongued flatterer. I was certain to Miss Rachel the next day. I recommended that she should tell Ablewhite in private that she had proof of his financial motives, and that therefore the marriage was out of the question. I told her to tell him that if he tried to oppose her, she would make her knowledge public. After I returned that evening, Ablewhite's father came to my office. He told me that his son had been dismissed by Miss Rachel and had accepted it. This confirmed my theory that Godfrey needed a large sum of money, and needed it quickly. Why else would he give up so easily a lifetime of luxury? His father wanted to know whether I had an explanation for Miss Verander's extraordinary behavior. Obviously, as her lawyer, I didn't have one. I was sure that Miss Verander might find him difficult to cope with when he visited the next day. I thought it better if I was with her. The meeting has been described by Miss Clack and resulted in Miss Rachel coming to stay. I felt uneasy, knowing he would have murdered me if he thought I had the Moonstone. I asked what his business was. He unfolded a gold cloth and showed me a tiny box, beautifully decorated with jewels. "I have come, sir," he said, "to ask you to lend me some money. I can leave this as a guarantee." "Luca recommended me?" I asked. He nodded. "Yet he knows I'm a lawyer, not a moneylender like him." As I watched him leave, that pawning the box was just an excuse to lead up to that very last question. Shortly afterwards, Luca came to see me. The substance of what that slippery old crook had to say is this. The Indian had visited him the day before, dressed in the same way. Luca recognized him as one of the Indians who had been begging at his house. Knowing that he must also be one of the men who had robbed him of his banker's receipt, Luca was terrified. The man showed him the box and asked for a loan. Luca refused, saying the best person to ask was a respectable lawyer. He recommended me. I asked him what the Indian had said before leaving. He had asked the same question and got the same answer. A year. Chapter 2. By an extraordinary coincidence, I met Mr. Murthwaite at a dinner that evening. Knowing he was a friend of Lady Verander's, I brought up the subject of the Moonstone. "Have you heard from the Indians lately?" he asked immediately. I described what had happened to Luca and myself. Set free, the governor of the prison came to see me with a letter addressed to the Indians at their hotel in Frissinghall. It was written in Hindustani. I translated it. It was, "In the name of the Prince of the Night, turn your faces south and come to me in the street of many noises, which leads to the muddy river. My own..." Third narrative, contributed by Franklin Blake. Chapter 1. In the spring of 1849, while I was travelling in Central Asia, I sent a servant to fetch my letters and money from the nearest British embassy. He returned with a letter from Mr. Bruff. He advised me to return home Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The shock of it stopped all thinking and feeling. The next thing I remember is walking back with Betteridge, and then his little sitting room. In the state I was in, the old man was an enormous comfort to me. I have absolutely no knowledge of taking the diamond, I told him. The very idea of my taking it is ridiculous. But here Chapter 4. I decided to go back to London that day, present the facts to Mr. Bruff, and obtain an interview, no matter how, with Rachel. "Betteredge," I asked, as we were walking to the station, "have you ever known me to walk in my sleep?" He nodded. "I see your meaning, sir," he replied. "And the answer is no. But if we are to believe the nightgown, then you went to the room that night with..." He examined the nightgown and read Rosanna Spearman's letter. "Mr. Franklin," he said, "this is a very serious matter, for Miss Rachel as much as for you. Her extraordinary behavior is no mystery now. She believes you took the diamond. She must be persuaded or forced to tell us why she thinks this. As a lawyer, I can tell you that the evidence against you falls down. Firstly, on one important point." I was playing the piano. The tune brought back a wave of memories. I had to wait and pull myself together. Finally, I opened the door. Chapter 5. She got up and we faced each other in silence. "Rachel," I said gently. She advanced as though against her own wishes, her cheeks a warm, dusky color. I forgot everything. I told her of my discovery of the shivering sand. She never said a word, never even looked at me. "I have a question to ask you," I said. "Did she show you the nightgown? Yes or no?" She jumped to her feet, looked at me searchingly, as though trying to read something in my eyes. "Are you mad?" she said. I simply replied, "Rachel, will you answer my question, please?"
Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "They say your father's death has made you a rich man. Have you come here to repay me for the loss of my diamond?" I could control myself no longer. "You've done me wrong," I cried. "You suspect me of stealing your diamond. I have a right to know why." "Suspect you?" she exclaimed. "I saw you take it with my own eyes." I stood there speechless. "Why did you come here?" she asked contemptuously. I advanced towards her, hardly conscious of what I was doing. The only words I could find were, "Rachel, you once loved me." I took her hand. She looked away, her hand trembling in mine. "Let go of me," she said faintly. I led her gently to the sofa and sat her down beside me. "Rachel," I said, "I can't possibly explain what I'm going to say. Yet it is the truth. You say you saw me take the diamond with your own eyes. What I say is this. I now realize, for the first time, that I took it. Do you still doubt my sincerity?" "Let go of me," she repeated weakly. But her head sank to my shoulder. Her hand unconsciously closed around mine. "Tell me everything that happened," I said. "From when we said good night to when you saw me take the diamond." She lifted her head, made an effort to release her hand. "Why go back to it?" she said. "I'll tell you why," I replied. "Because we're the victims of some horrible trick." Tears fell slowly over her cheeks. "Oh," tears to my eyes. "I got up at about 1 o'clock, she continued, "and lit a candle. I was about to go into my sitting room to get a book. I had just opened the door, but hadn't gone in, when I saw a light under the other door and heard footsteps approaching along the corridor. I thought it was my mother coming to try and persuade me to let her take care of the diamond. I blew out the candle so she would think I was in bed. The moment I blew it out, the door opened, and I saw." I got up and walked up and down. "So," she said, "what do you have to say now?" She waited pitilessly for my reply. I had none. Only the terrible, shameful helplessness of my situation. I suddenly felt the horror, the disappointment she must have felt. I turned and opened the door to leave. She jumped up, closed the door. "No," she said, "not yet." She spoke what we had. But even then, something wouldn't let me give up my faith in you. I went down to the terrace and forced myself to speak to you. Have you forgotten what I said? I could have answered, but for what purpose? "I know what I said," she went on. "I gave you several opportunities, didn't I, to tell me the truth? I let you know in the clearest possible way, without actually saying it, that I knew you had stolen it. All you did was look at me with your false face of innocence, just as you are now, as if a few words could end a little misunderstanding. I saw you steal it. I saw you pretend to help the police. You pawned it in London and ran away abroad the next morning. And now you come here and tell me I have wronged you." I brushed past her and opened the door. She left her. "Franklin," she cried after me, "I forgive you. Oh, Franklin, Franklin, shall we never meet again? Say you forgive me." I turned, seeing her only dimly through my tears, before I left the garden.
Chapter 6. Late that evening, Mr. Bruff visited me. Not at all his usual confident self. "You know the truth at last," he said. "However, the price you'll be watching it too. Whatever happens, we must find out who pawned the diamond. Only the discovery of the thief can restore you to your rightful place in Miss Rachel's heart. It means waiting about a fortnight at the most." "A lifetime," I said. "My existence is a horrible dream. I must do something now. I had thought of contacting Sergeant Cuff. Useless. He has retired from the police. I told him I'm a member of the Young Mothers, etc., Society. She had also been a friend of Miss Clack, but had only left her a ring. £5,000 richer, Godfrey felt the need for a rest from his charitable activities. He had left London for Europe the previous day, and was expected to be gone at least 3 months. I arrived too late in Fritzinghall to see Betteridge. The next morning I sent a messenger to ask him to come to my hotel. I decided to visit Dr. Candy before he came. When I saw the once lively little doctor, I could hardly recognize him. His eyes were dim, his face thin and grey. The man was a wreck. "Yes, I have often thought of you, Mr. Blake," the poor man said, then forgot what he wanted to say next. "You remember the mysterious loss of the Indian diamond?" I said. "I'm trying to find it. I need to find out everything I can about what happened at the birthday party. There may be a clue. Do you remember anything out of the ordinary?" The doctor picked restlessly at his fingers, his dull eyes fixed emptily on me. The man had no idea what I was talking about. "You sent a message to Gabriel Betteridge saying you wanted to see me," I said. Yes, he said. "That's it. I sent you a message." He tried to remember why. I tried to help. "It's been nearly a year now since the dinner at Lady Verinder's. It was the last time we saw each other." "Ah, the dinner, he said. "Yes, I've something to say to you about that." He looked at me with a painful expression of inquiry, desperately trying to remember. "Yes, it was a most pleasant dinner," he said. By this time I had been with him nearly an hour. Not wanting to tire him, I rose to leave. "I'm so glad we've met again," he said. I went slowly downstairs, certain he had had something to say. A door opened on the ground floor, and a gentle voice said, "I'm afraid, sir, that Dr. Candy is sadly changed." It was Ezra Jennings. Chapter 7. He had a patient to see and was going my way. As we were leaving Fritzing Hall, I told him that Dr. Candy had tried to tell me something, but his memory had failed him. "Is there a way I might possibly help him to remember?" I asked. His dreamy brown eyes looked at me with a flash of interest. "It's amazing he's still alive," he said. "The fever did permanent damage. However, Mr. Blake, it may be possible to trace Dr. Candy's lost memory without Dr. Candy took the diamond," I said. "But I did it without my own knowledge. I have to be able to prove that somehow." He became suddenly still, looked at me very strangely, then took me by the arm. "You have travelled in the East, Mr. Blake. You must know about the effects of opium on human consciousness." I nodded. He invited me to sit down on a wall. "Yes. It is a powerful painkiller, but even opium has its limit." As he spoke, I realized the horror his daily life must have been. "Were your nerves out of order this time last year?" he asked me. "Were you restless or nervous?" I told him I was, that I had been sleeping badly night after night. "Was the night of the birthday an exception?" "Try and remember." I told him it was the first night I had slept well since I had given up smoking, the cause of my nervousness. He let go of my arm, as though at last seeing something. "I'm absolutely certain of one thing," he said slowly. "I know what Dr. Candy wanted to say to you. I have it in the notes I took at his bedside." "Explain yourself," I cried. "Please, what do you mean?" "I have a patient to see. Give me 2 hours. Then call at Dr. Candy's house." He hurried away. Chapter 8. I returned to Fritzing Hall. 2 hours later, Ezra Jennings was waiting for me, sitting alone in a little bare room on the ground floor, the walls covered with illustrations of horrible diseases. "I have my notes ready for you," he said.
But before we start, do you mind if I ask you one or two more questions? Your fears and doubts about the diamond, for instance, were exaggerated into certainties that pulled you to Miss Verinder's sitting room. Later, back in your room, as the second, calming action took effect, you fell into a deep sleep. The experiment may enable you to remember what you did with the diamond after you left Miss Verinder's room. You may remember where you hid it. I stopped him there. The diamond is in London now, I said, and nobody knows how it got there. I told him about Luca. All right, he said. But the experiment may still throw some light on how the stone got into someone else's hands. In order for it to succeed, it is extremely important to recreate exactly the same conditions as on the birthday night. Out of the question, I said. Lady Verinder is dead. Mr. Ablewhite is in Europe. That doesn't matter. No, what I meant was that you must give up Smoke June. The experiment has now been tried. I will now pass the pen to Ezra Jennings. He will tell you the result. Fourth narrative. From the diary of Ezra Jennings. 1849. June the 15th. Terrible pain all day. I wrote a letter to Miss Verinder. June the 16th. Woke late after a terrible night. Yesterday's opium produced awful nightmares. A return of the pain at dawn. It was late morning before I could visit Mr. Blake. He had had a very restless night. Exactly what happened last year when I gave up smoking, he complained. I advised him to get some fresh air. He told me he had written to the 19th. A letter from Miss Verinder agreeing to my arrangements. June the 20th. Mr. Blake was extremely nervous. He is now continually restless at night. Sergeant Cuff wrote to him from Ireland, saying that because of Lady Verinder's generosity towards him, he agrees to help Mr. Franklin in any way he can. I advised him to inform the sergeant of everything that had happened, and invite him to be present during the experiment first dose. My notes inform me that Dr. Candy gave him 40 drops, quite a large amount. 10 o'clock. Miss Verinder and Mr. Bruff arrived together an hour ago. She was shocked, of course, by my appearance, but she hid it better than most. I can't treat you like a stranger, Mr. Jennings, she said warmly. Your letters have made me so happy. Be present when I prepared the opium, and then remain with us in Mr. Blake's room. He agreed reluctantly, saying he had more important things to do, making a show of gathering up his legal papers. We then went to see Miss Verinder. She was pale and restless, striding up and down. She asked me how he was, how long the opium would take to work. I said roughly an hour. She agreed to wait in her bedroom exactly as before. I measured out the dose, mixed it with water, then got out the piece of glass that was to be the diamond. She showed me the drawer to put it in. Betteredge and Bruff witnessed everything. We then left Miss Verinder and returned to Mr. Blake. They saw me give him the dose and tell him to lie down and wait. We then, to my surprise, lay down again. I had a horrible feeling the experiment had failed. But then he slowly got up again. We waited, hidden behind the curtains. He crossed the room, opened the door, and went out. We followed him along the corridor. Without looking back, he went straight to Miss Verinder's rooms, opened her sitting-room door, and went in. He went to the middle of the room and looked round him. He let the diamond drop out of his hand. It fell by the door, visible to him and to us. For a long time, he looked down at it emptily, until suddenly his head sank down onto his chest. It was too late. The calming action of the drug had begun. It's all over, I said. He'll probably sleep for the next 6 hours. We gathered around him. He can sleep here on the sofa, Miss Verinder said. I'll watch over him. We placed him on the sofa, and for the rest of the night she and I kept watch over him in silence. The light of day grew in the room, and still he never moved. Towards 6, I felt my pain coming back, and made an excuse to leave the room. Luckily, it was not a long attack, and I was soon reached, no doubt. My patients are waiting, so I must hurry. Fifth narrative. The story continued by Franklin Blake. I woke that morning ignorant of what I had said or done after the drug first took effect. I opened my eyes and looked into Rachel's. When we arrived in London, a boy called Gooseberry met Bruff at the station. Guards placed themselves on either side of him. They left, followed closely by one of Bruff's men. I pointed out the man to Bruff. "Did you see anything?" I said. He shook his head. Neither Bruff's second man nor Gooseberry were anywhere to be seen. "What do we do now?" I asked. "Come back to my office and wait," he replied. Bruff's second man was waiting there when we arrived. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. "I was sure I saw him pass something to an elderly gentleman. It turns out he's a respectable doctor in Westminster." Bruff asked him where Gooseberry was. He didn't know. As we were having supper at Bruff's office, the man who followed Luca returned. Luca had gone straight home and not gone out again. His guards had left later. "He would never have sent them home if he had the stone," said Bruff. The house was being carefully watched. There had been no sign of the Indians. We waited until it was time for Bruff to go home. I returned to Rachel, leaving my address in case the boy returned. When I got home after midnight, my servant informed me that Gooseberry had called. He would return early the next day. As I was having breakfast, there was a knock on my door. Expecting Gooseberry, I was surprised when Sergeant Cuff...
Wheel of Fortune. I followed him in, followed by the mechanic. It was very crowded. The sailor asked for a bed. "No," the landlord said, "they were full." A barmaid corrected him. Room 10 was empty. I noticed, just before a waiter took the sailor upstairs to his room, that the mechanic had disappeared. I waited. The landlord was called for. I heard angry voices upstairs. The mechanic appeared at the top of the stairs, looking very drunk. The landlord pulled him downstairs, arguing with him, and threw him out. It seems he'd been discovered in number 10. I noticed that as soon as he was outside, he wasn't drunk anymore. I waited. Nothing else happened, so I decided to go back to Mr. Bruff's office. As I left, I noticed the mechanic on the other side of the street, staring up at a lit window.
When we entered the Wheel of Fortune, it was clear that something was wrong. The barmaid said the landlord was upstairs and was not to be bothered. Sergeant Cuff ignored this and went up. The barmaid called out, and the landlord, obviously in a temper, appeared in front of us at the top of the stairs. The words, "I am Sergeant Cuff," had a magical effect. "I have some inquiries to make, sir," said the sergeant, "about a dark man dressed as a sailor who slept here." He was dead. I felt a soft pull on my coat-tail.
"Look, sir,"
whispered Gooseberry, pointing to a little wooden box, open, empty. There was a torn sheet of paper inside, with the Lombard Street Bank's name on it. Inside this envelope is a small wooden box containing an extremely valuable object, left in the bank's care by Mr. Septimus Luca. The box can only be removed from the bank. Looked round and saw him lying on the bed, half of his makeup washed off. It was Godfrey Ablewhite. Sixth narrative. Contributed by Sergeant Cuff. First of all, what happened to the diamond? The letter I received from Mr. Murthwaite yesterday leaves little doubt. Writing from India, the explorer informed me that a new temple of the moon god is being built in Benares. The work began shortly after the arrival of 3 priests in the city, and is being organized by them. At a ceremony to bless the site of the temple, the 3 men announced that the eye of the moon has returned. As for the dead man, later investigations revealed that Mr. Abel White's life had 2 sides. Side A, the public one, who had also suffered from Mr. Blake's tongue that evening, joined Betteridge in trying to persuade Mr. Blake to take a little whiskey before bed. Let us now direct our attention to Luca's house in London. Late on the evening of the 23rd of June, 1848, Luca received a visit from Abel White. You can imagine his surprise when Abel White produced the Moonstone. Luca was extremely curious to know how the famous stone had come into the lawyer's possession. Abel White told a story which only sharpened Luca's suspicion. Desperate, Abel White finally told the truth. His money troubles had kept him awake on the night of the birthday. He had heard Blake talking to himself in his bedroom and had looked in to see what was the matter. He saw Blake, candle in hand, coming towards the door. He followed Blake to Miss Verinder's sitting room, saw him take the diamond, £5,000 that led Abel White to his death, because it enabled him to pay back Luca and recover the Moonstone. I will only add one more detail to Mr. Blake's description of the circumstances of Abel White's death. The lock of the window in the roof was broken, no doubt by the mechanic, so enabling a trained athletic person to open it from the outside, descend noiselessly, and I will leave the rest to your imagination.